what I'd like to talk about today is your energy currency. Basically, what I mean by that is the energy that you have available to you, because with ME/CFS, you have a limited amount of energy and a limited type of energy available to you. And so I want to talk about how to manage that as best you can so that you don't experience symptom exacerbation. As part of that, I want to talk about the importance of core stability. How many of you have heard the term or understand what core stability is? Let me just see a show of hands if you understand what core stability is. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not many. Okay. All right. Good. Hopefully you'll learn something new here. And then I want to talk a little bit about structuring the physical activities that you do during the day to improve your overall physical function and still avoid symptom flares. And then 10 tips for conserving energy, and I'm sure if we put our collective heads together, you could add many, many more tips to that, but I'll give you 10 tips for energy conservation. Things that you can use as examples throughout your day and find other ways to conserve your energy. So let me start out by talking about energy currency. And what I mean by that is ways that you produce your energy physiologically, metabolically, and one of those ways is through anaerobic energy production. Doesn't require oxygen to produce energy in this manner. And you have two ways to do that. I'll call it the short-term anaerobic energy system. And I have this example of if you don't recognize this gentleman, he's the, I don't know, maybe he's employed now, but unemployed former quarterback of an NFL football team in the States. His name is Tim Tebow, and he's doing a commercial here, so he's not really saving puppies from a burning fire. But my point is, if the fire alarm in this room went off and you had to get out of here quickly, this is the energy system that would get you up out of the chair and out that door. All right? Readily available, already packed into your cells, ready to get called into action if need be. It's very short-lived. It doesn't hang around for too long, all right, before you have to rest and recover or replenish it. But it is an emergency form of energy that you have available to you, not even for emergencies, but just for quick bursts of energy. You can do that just fine. You're pretty good at it. The second form of energy currency you have available to you is through a little longer-term anaerobic type of energy-producing system. So if you were going to do some sort of vigorous kind of activity where maybe you're running these stairs and you're doing it for a minute or 45 seconds, this is the kind of energy system that would power that activity. Does that make sense? Okay? And then it kind of burns out. And then you have to recover it. And to recover it, you have to decrease your overall energy output to allow this to recover. Third type, and it's the last one. This is the end of it here. It's your aerobic energy producing system. This is what you're garnering your energy from right now. This is what's powering your sitting and attending to this presentation. You're all aerobic right now to some extent. Although I bet if I were to test you, I would find some of you, in particular, if you have ME/CFS, maybe not so aerobic. You might actually be tapping into one of those first two energy systems just to sit here and pay attention, which is not a good thing because I just told you it's a short-lived energy system. This one goes on for quite a while. This is the energy that's produced for people who go out and jog or walk for long periods of time. It powers that individual quite readily without a problem. Unless you have ME/CFS, then this particular energy system does not work like it should. And we don't know why, and I'm sorry about that. We don't, and we're working on it. But what we do know is that it doesn't work well. It doesn't recover like it should. It doesn't work well. So when you got one of your major energy-producing systems not working so well, and you go out and do some physical activity that now needs to be recovered from, what are your only options for recovering? In other words, how are you going to power your bodies if this energy system isn't working well? Anaerobic, right? That's what's working. And so when that's all you have left, that's what you use. But you just learned that when you're using that energy system, it kind of conks out quickly because they're not designed to be a long-term energy system. Are you starting to understand the challenge here? Okay. What we don't want to do, what we shouldn't be doing with patients who have ME/CFS is trying to improve their aerobic energy system. And that's what graded exercise therapy traditionally does. Yours doesn't work right now, so we have to avoid that. So I'm going to talk about ways of conserving the energy and using what little bit of aerobic energy you can produce and try to keep you out of those symptom flares which happen when you try to require too much of your energy production through aerobic energy means. This is data from Stacy Stevens. Stacy Stevens is a patient. She has ME/CFS, although we wouldn't call her a patient. She's very functional. She's an exercise physiologist. She's the founder of the Workwell Foundation out in California and has been doing research on ME/CFS for many years. And she was the brainchild behind the 2-day exercise test protocol, if you're familiar with that. And this data that we're looking at here is from 30 patients she's tested. And quite simply, what it shows is that when they did an exercise test here that lasted 5 to 10 minutes, any of the 30 patients with ME/CFS, 75% took 3 days or longer to recover from that. If I were to do this exact same exercise test with a healthy individual, they would be recovered the next day and they would be able to reproduce that all over again. And that's because their aerobic energy system is working normally. So you're all familiar with this term post-exertional malaise, yes? Okay. I don't need to define it for you. I'm sure you've all experienced it, unfortunately. But by definition, it is a, and we hate to say fatigue, but sometimes when I write about it, I have to say fatigue. I actually had somebody write back to me and say, I looked up the word malaise in Webster's dictionary, and I thought, well, that's a problem. If you're supposed to be making decisions about ME/CFS, you shouldn't have to look that word up. But so sometimes I have to use fatigue, and it's not really fatigue, as you all know, because it often encompasses many other symptoms, including headaches, pain exacerbation, cognitive functioning, nausea, temperature regulation, all sorts of things. Lucinda Bateman is a physician who treats ME/CFS and fibromyalgia patients out in the West. She works sometimes with Stacy Stevens. And she was quoted as saying, treating post-exertional malaise once it happens is more difficult than preventing it, which is why I'm talking to you about ways that we can prevent it. And the number one strategy is to be preemptive. In other words, to orchestrate or organize your day in such a way that you have reserves and you don't tap into that level of energy need that will cause your symptoms. So don't wait for a crash before you do something about it. If you were to talk to Stacy Stevens, she manages her PEM symptoms quite well. She will, at noon every day, lay down for 1 hour, or pretty close to noon. Regardless of what's going on, she will lay down for 1 hour and close her eyes and relax, whether she feels well or not. If she feels well, and she said, oh, no, I can keep going, she won't. She will lay down because she knows this works for her. And if you think about it for yourselves, rather than pushing you to the point where you're running out of those energy reserves, think about this as a way to sort of protect those energy reserves. How long you might need to lie down depends on you, and it depends on your symptoms. But if you think about incorporating that into your daily schedule, that you might find that 15 minutes will work well for you, 60 minutes, 75 minutes. You'll have to play with it. But if it helps to keep you away from flaring your symptoms, then it's well worth it. Would you agree? The second strategy is to pace. And what I mean by that is to work throughout your day in such a way that you don't force your body into that energy-producing system that's not working so well. Now, this is going to vary a lot from one individual to the next. You have to explore it to find out what works for you. But determining whether or not your pacing is working for you is always a function of whether your symptoms are getting worse. Are you having flares? If you're having flares, then you're not pacing well. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Activity level and the type of activities that you choose to do or you are doing or you think you should be doing will vary depending on your state of wellness or illness and whether or not you're flaring. All right, back to pacing. You need to know your triggers. You need to know what kinds of activities, and it might not be necessarily a very physical activity. It might be too much light. It might be something you drank or something you ate. It might be too much time in front of the screen, and we do a lot of that. Too much time in front of that little tiny screen that changes our skeletal conformation. And most importantly about pacing, you need to think cyclically, not linearly. And what I mean by cyclically is that instead of planning your day, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to make my bed or not, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, very linearly, I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this. You need to think about accomplishing certain things, taking that rest, restoring yourself, and then circling around and starting over with another cycle. So your cycles always have that recovery period in them. And you don't just start the day and go straight through till you end the day. Does that make sense? Okay. And then plan ahead. Sometimes things will happen. Sometimes you will flare. Sometimes you don't feel like going out. Sometimes you don't want to prepare food. So we'll talk a bit about that as well. Have some in your house, ready to go. So use your energy wisely, and basically your preconceived, I shouldn't even say preconceived, your current idea of what is normal for you needs to be redefined. What you used to do on a regular basis is not how you need to be working now to avoid symptom flares. So maybe you were a jogger, or maybe you were just very physically active in your occupation. And how you do your physical activity now needs to switch somewhat so that you don't flare those symptoms and venture into that aerobically demanding kind of day that you had. So you need to focus on what we call quality of living and use your symptom flares as your outcome measure. In other words, is how I'm managing my day working? I felt really lousy at the end of the day. It's not working then. There's Stacy right there. That's Stacy Stevens working with one of her clients and talking about a physical activity strategy with her client and showing her exercises that help to improve what we call functional movement. That's one of the prongs of a good physical activity program for you, that you increase the strength or preserve the strength in your body so that you can do functional kinds of activities without overly stressing your energy metabolism in a way that doesn't work for you. So the goal of your physical activity strategy should be to improve your range of motion. In other words, as we get older, we lose flexibility, and we're always fighting that. But especially if you have pain, sometimes that can be mitigated by doing regular stretching kinds of exercises, activities that will re-elongate the muscles, because pain is very contracting and it's very exhausting. It tightens the muscles and it exhausts you. So we want to recover the normal length of the muscles through range of motion or flexibility exercises, What I'm going to focus on is improving our core stability, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, and then overall improving your functional strength. And this is an example of one way to do that, where they're working on hip and leg strength here and a little bit of arm strength that's very functional, because this is the kind of thing that you have to do when you go up and down stairs. So the key concepts that you need to be thinking about as I finish up through the rest of this talk is that appropriate physical activity is movement from which you recover, and you're the best person to know whether that's happening or not. Physical activity needs to be restorative both physically and mentally for you. You might actually be feeling okay physically, but your brain fog is really clouding your way. So if that's happening, then maybe the physical activity strategy you're using is not working well either. Match your physical activity program to function. What are the kinds of physical functions that you must do every day? That's what you should be focusing on in your physical activity program, so you're able to do those without tapping into that energy system that doesn't work so well. Focused breathing or nose breathing is hugely important, and as simple as it sounds, it's probably something that, especially if you're having pain, you're not doing at all. Who knows what focused or nose breathing is? How many of you practice it? I'm just curious. Okay. Pardon me?
Could you describe it?
I'm going to. I'm just kind of curious here. So it's exactly what it says. It's breathing in through your nose and breathing out through your nose. 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out through your nose. All right? It's nice if you close your eyes when you do it. And it's very restorative. And when you have pain, you're most likely to stop breathing in this manner, because pain is fatiguing and uncomfortable, and we tend to tighten when we have pain. And make room for structured physical activity by taking something else out of your day. So don't expect that you should add what I'm talking about to your day. Something's got to go away. I'm sorry, but it has to. You got to trade here. It's a trade-off. All right, so if you talk to Stacy Stevens, who's worked with lots of patients over the years to improve their physical function, she'll talk about these 4 stages. And it could be, well, they seem very basic, stretching and stretching with resistance training, dose-controlled interval training, and then maintenance. It could be that this stage might take 3 months. It might take 6 months. It might take 6 weeks. It varies depending on the individual. It won't take 2 weeks. If I were working with somebody healthy, this might be something we do over the course of a week or 2, and we would move on. In fact, the whole protocol would look quite different. But in the case of someone with ME/CFS, what we should be focusing on is recovering the length of muscle, getting rid of those overly tight, contracted muscles, which contribute to pain, and core stability. And I have that highlighted here because that's what I'm going to talk about. And your overall goal is to improve physical function. So core stability to improve or to conserve your energy is huge. And frankly, this is huge for anybody. It's critically important for athletes. And it's something we've really only started to focus on with athletes over the last 15 years or so. In fact, I'm from Ithaca, New York, and the hockey team at Cornell University is replete with Canadians. Half of the Cornell hockey team, women's hockey team, won that gold medal for you because they're from Canada. But until fairly recently, they too weren't focusing on core stability in their training. And we had a lot of groin injuries and other kind of injuries that come from having poor core stability, even though these were very talented athletes. And so I got to talk a little bit about this because it is the most important means of improving energy transfer from one end of your body to the other and protecting your spine while you're doing it. So if I were talking to physical therapists, I might describe core stabilization like this. It's the complex interplay of core structures. Don't write that down because I'm going to break it down. This doesn't really mean much, but core structures include muscles, bones, ligaments, tendons, everything basically from here to here. Some people even say down to the knees. This is your core, front, side, and back. And a good core that's stable provides what we call proximal stability and allow for distal mobility. What that means is basically if your core is strong and stable, anything you do with your hands or your feet or your legs is most energy efficient. If you have a weak core and you're trying to push or pull something with your arms, trying to open a stuck window or pull a stuck door open, and you're not strong through the core, you're going to do a lot more work with your legs to try to stabilize yourself. And you put a lot more stress on your extremity joints, elbows, knees, ankles, wrists, shoulders. On the other hand, if your core is strong and stable, then when it's tight, all you need to do is give a little pull with your arm, and the core contains the energy. So I'm going to give you a little example of this in a minute, and I'm going to show you how you can recruit your core to make it more stable as well. So what we're trying to achieve with improved core stability is good spinal alignment. When your spine is aligned, things work better. Lymph flows better, blood flows better, nervous tissue transmits signals better. And so in this nicely aligned spine, you see that the ear is over the shoulder is over the hip, and the hip, but you can't see it, is over the knee, and the knee is over the ankle, and it's pretty nice and straight all the way down. So here's a nice straight spine with that 12-pound head plucked on top of it, right there. Here's what we tend to see, and many of us as we get a little older, and we get that chin forward posture. Our pectoral muscles, our chest muscles get tight, our back gets weak. We get a little flexed at the hips, and we walk around like this. Are we familiar with that? You all know what I'm talking about? Okay. In reality, when that happens, when that happens, and that chin is jutted a little further forward and we've lost some of the spinal alignment, the actual weight that your torso is carrying on top of it is equivalent to 32 pounds. 15 kgs. So, all right, so it's a lot heavier than it should be because it's jutted out in front of this optimal line of stability. As we get a little bit older and gravity starts to win out even more, we get more of that chin forward posture, the weight of our head becomes even greater for our spine to support. So now you're carrying around a 42-pound head versus a 12-pound head. You got the idea. And that takes a lot of energy all day long to do that. And you can see here examples of sitting position. All right, here's where we'd like to be, that nice straight spine. Here's where we often are, or much worse. And we don't want to overextend in the back and create this as well. That's just as bad. But we want a nice spinal alignment. So when you do these exercises, and we've handed out some of them to you. I'm going to talk about them in a minute because some of them are not where you want to start and some of them are good for starters. But the most important aspect of doing core stability types of activities is that you focus on the quality, not the quantity. So if you take a look at the handout in front of you, you'll see that in those examples, the alignment from the ear to the hip should be pretty straight. And when you're doing those exercises, if you choose to do them, what I suggest is that you have somebody watch you and to help you gain that kind of alignment. Because believe me, if you haven't done these before, you really don't know where straight is unless somebody's looking at you. Attention to proper balance when you're doing any kind of exercise like this, where you're carrying your body around or you have weights, but I'm not going to recommend that you have weights. And that you focus on doing lots of repetitions of this. They may be very short. It may be 4 or 5 seconds long, and then you relax, and then you repeat it again. But the way that you get your core muscles stronger and stable is by repeating the exercises over and over again. For example, when you walk around, you use your leg muscles over and over again. To get those core muscles as effective, as efficient as your leg muscles, you have to repeat the exercise multiple times. You just take the appropriate rest in between. Don't need any weights for these exercises. In fact, you don't want any weights. And when you're fatigued, you stop and you allow your body to recover, because if you're not doing it correctly, you shouldn't be doing it. And then, of course, avoid any exercises that create pain. So we're actually going to go through a couple of these, or we're going to find your core, and I'll explain what that means in a second. But whenever you do this, if you choose to do this at home, you always begin with what we call belly breathing, which is also nose breathing, which is also focused breathing. It's breathing in and out through your nose and getting your body nicely oxygenated. And as I pointed out earlier, this is also very useful if you're having pain, because pain, as I said before, contracts the muscles, it tightens the muscles, which decreases the blood flow to the muscles, which causes the muscles to be deoxygenated, and it exacerbates your pain. So you need to reoxygenate and improve blood flow to the muscles. So you ready? Okay, good. Here we go. All right. So we're going to start by contracting your pelvic floor. Anybody have any idea how to do that? One. I think I taught you, didn't I? Okay, good. All right, so this slide's supposed to be after my other slide, but I guess I rearranged them in the wrong order. So contracting the pelvic floor for women, how many have heard the term Kegel or Kegel? Kegel, Kegel, Kegel. Okay, if you've had kids, you know the Kegel exercise. For men, pretend you're walking into a cold pond. Raise your jewels. Those are usually what I have to tell men, okay? It's not a butt squeeze, all right? So we'll start by, you don't have to do it quite yet, but we start by contracting the pelvic floor. The next step is that we draw in, and when I say draw in, I mean pull your belly button towards your spine. So here's my belly button, here's my spine. You want to pull it in this way. And actually think about it coming in and going up. So in and up with your belly button. All right? Raise your rib cage. So usually when I teach this, can you hear me back there? Okay. I'll only be out here for a minute. I'll go back. So when I teach this, usually I have them contract the pelvic floor, pull the belly button up and in, and people do this. So now I have to get them straight, because am I straight? I'm not straight, right? So I have to bring the rib cage up. And then I usually have people doing this. Okay? So shoulder blades back and down. And this is where I get this. And I have to bring the chin back in. So it's 5 steps. All right? Start from the base of the core, which is your pelvic floor. So contract your pelvic floor. If you want to do that, it's the first step to stabilizing your core. And if you think of your core as a soda can, if you were to take the soda can and cut the bottom off of it, could you just crush that soda can easily? You could, right? Be very unstable if you cut the core, the base of the core off. So that's how you should think of your core, as a soda can, and the bottom of your core is your pelvic floor. All right, here we have the leaning Tower of Pisa, which is leaning because the base of the tower is crumbling. So your core bottom is your pelvic floor. And if you were actually to look, I have a picture which I left out because it's just a lot of muscles. But if you were to look from the top down towards your pelvic floor, there's loads of muscles going in all different angles, and it kind of looks like it creates a hammock. And that's what you should think of when you're contracting your pelvic floor, that you're tightening that hammock up. So for women, again, it's Kegel. For men, raise your jewels. I don't know how else to say it. That's what it is. It's not squeezing your butt cheeks together, guys, which is what you usually do. So we'll just go from there. Okay, if you choose to stand up and do this, sometimes you can feel a little bit better, but you can also sit and do this, and you can lay down and do this. So however you want to do this, if you want to try standing up, feel free to stand up, and we'll go through a couple little steps to see if we can find your pelvic floor, or if you can find your pelvic floor. So I find it a little easier to stand up personally, but I'll leave that up to you. All right, so we're going to pretend that your pelvic floor is an elevator. All right? And right now, the elevator is in the basement. It's on the ground floor, and you have to bring the elevator up to the first floor. So for women, just do a little bit of a Kegel exercise. For guys, that cold pond, raise your jewels a little bit up to the first floor, and now go back to the lobby. So relax. All right? Now go back up to the first floor again. Little bit stronger contraction to the second floor. Back down to the first floor, but don't relax completely. And then back to the lobby. Completely relax it. All right, now take it up to the first floor and then relax it. And do that 5 times if you can. Doesn't have to be super strenuous, just a little bit. And the beauty is that nobody knows you're doing it. Right? Nobody knows. Okay. And if you can do that, you found the base of your core. So thank you very much. You were all good participants in that. What you just found was the set of muscles that you need to actually be thinking about when you get up out of this chair, when you sit back down into this chair, when you bend over to pick anything up, if you use a vacuum cleaner, you go to sit down to get into your car, that's the set of muscles that you need to contract first. All right? And when you do that, unbeknownst to you perhaps, what you just did was you tilted your pelvis in its proper alignment and you straightened your spine up. All right? Now the other 4 steps I just mentioned, contract the pelvic floor, suck your belly button into the spine, raise your rib cage, shoulders back and down, relaxed, and then bring your chin in, gets you a nice spinal alignment. But if you can just remember this first step here, and you do this when you get up from the chair, when you get ready to leave here, or any other physical activity, what you will find is that you have stabilized your core more than you normally would have, and the energy it takes for you to do any of those movements is far less. Now, you sort of have to believe me. I know this sounds like snake oil or some other kind of voodoo something or other, but it's true. All right? Part of the energy that you are expending during the day is because your core is weak and your pelvis is not stable, and so you spend a lot of time just trying to find that balance with your core. When you start to strengthen your core, your balance will improve. So you're going to have to believe me on that. But you've all seen gymnasts on those balance beams, right? It's a 4-inch wide piece of wood. And they do back handsprings and flips and all sorts of things. And they do that because they're doing this. That's how they stay straight on that beam, with a lot of practice too. But their core stability is very good. So step number 2, draw in or brace. You can do that sitting right in your chair. First, do your Kegel or raise your jewels, whatever. And then suck your belly button into your spine. None of these are the way that that is accomplished, by the way. They're just kind of freakish things this guy can do with his abdominal muscles, which are very strange. But all you want to do is, when I say suck your belly button into your spine, is what you're trying to do is find that neutral position for your spine. And so in this case, we call it a drawing in. And in this case, she's pulling her pelvis or her belly button toward her spine here. And she's not flattening her spine completely. She's not flattening her back there completely. Here's another example of it, kind of blurry. And then raise your rib cage. I call it the umbrella diaphragm, but that's what you want to think about. You want to think about opening up your rib cage. All right? Like your diaphragm is an umbrella. And to do that, you need to raise it up. Oftentimes, gravity, fatigue, everything has compressed our diaphragm and brought our rib cage down here. So we need to use our back muscles and extend our spine, starting down here again, to open it up. So I always tell people that's like wearing a Superman cape when I was a kid. You know, if we put the capes on and we thought we were super, you feel that little tug that the cape gives you on the back, on your back, and it kind of pulls you up this way. And that's why I use the Superman analogy, because it sticks. And he's pretty straight too. So an exercise to accomplish this is what we call a Superman exercise, interestingly enough. And you're laying on the ground, and then you raise up. Now, I would not recommend that you do this. It is on your handout. But you don't need to start like this. You can start by just raising one arm, all right, and then raising the other arm up and down, and then raising one leg up and down. And the only thing I don't really like about this picture is I would like her head down a little bit more so that her ear was lined up with her shoulder, was lined up with her hip, et cetera, et cetera. Do you see the difference there? Okay. And she's pretty strong. She's got good core stability. So she's got both arms and both legs up. But that's not where you need to begin. You can start with one and then go to two and then go to right arm, left leg, diagonal pair. Okay, and then the other diagonal pair. And I bet what you'll find when you get to your diagonal pairs is that you'll have one side that's better than the other, one diagonal that's stronger than the other, because we're kind of lopsided, frankly. All right, this is an exercise called Scaption, and it's a more advanced exercise, and I'm not advocating it for you, especially with the weights in your hands. No weights. Don't pick up any weights, please. All right, but you can see what this individual is doing quite nicely by raising his arms up and keeping nice spinal alignment, if we had a picture from the side, and he's actually making his shoulder blades slide together and down. And part of why we walk around like this is because our muscles in our backs have gotten weak, and we have a very difficult time asking those muscles to pull our shoulder blades back where they belong. If you do that while you're sitting there, you can prove my point, that this is something we don't do very much anymore in the course of our day. We spend a lot of time with our arms in front of us doing all these kinds of activities, very little doing this. And this is very important for spinal alignment. All right, so slide your blades together, shoulders back and down. Oftentimes, people will do this, and I have to remind them to relax. I just want them back here and down. Bring your blades together. Okay, there's our Superman. Here's another exercise, and again, don't get on the ball to do this. You can do this on the floor, and in your handout, you'll see 4 exercises down here. I call them the alphabet exercises. The Y, the T, the W, et cetera, and the I. This individual's laying on the floor, no weights, using their back muscles in the way that you need to be able to do these kinds of muscle activities. So you don't need any special equipment, but this kind of exercise down here at the bottom is going to help improve your back strength and contribute to better core stability pretty readily with just doing these exercises here. Retract your chin. That's the last one. People tend to have that chin out there because gravity tends to win the war. And our chest muscles get very tight because we do things like, oh, I don't know, type on a computer all day, or read a book in front of us, or drive the car. All of those kinds of things get our chest muscles tight and stretch our back muscles. So, and then that heavy head gets even heavier. So you see what this gentleman is doing? He's just standing up against the wall and retracting his chin against the wall, and he's applying a little pressure against the wall. So that means you find a wall, which I'm sure you can do, and you stand straight and you just apply a little bit of pressure, or you can sit against a wall and do the same thing. Now, this little girl did not listen to this lecture. Kids before the age of 4 just know how to do this. And she's pretty straight, would you agree? She's got very good core stability, in fact. But by the time kids get into school and we sit them down all day in the classrooms, they lose core strength. And unfortunately, she probably will too. So this is called the bird dog exercise. It's on your handout. And it's a simple one to do, although it looks simple. But in reality, to get yourself straight from here to here is not easy. In fact, her hand could be up a little bit higher. And having somebody watch you do this would be helpful. But she's recruiting. She started with a Kegel, believe it or not, sucked her belly button into her spine, got her rib cage raised. She's sliding her shoulder blades together, and I'd say she's a little tight through the pectoral, the chest muscles, because she can't get that arm all the way up. And that happens to a lot of us. That's pretty common, all right? So alternate arm and leg, and don't go for speed. You just do that. You get into that position, and you try to get yourself straight and hold it for a few seconds, and then you rest. Here are some other forms. Here we have a bird dog again, and as you can see, she's a little weak through the back, so she can't get that leg up. She's tight through her hip flexors. Those are the muscles that we use to pick our legs up and climb up and down hills, or walk, or jog, or step into our car, and they get very tight on most of us. And she's tight through her chest muscle because she can't get her arm up all the way too. So she's got some back strengthening and some range of motion or flexibility work to do through her hips. All right, so this is a good one to start with on your handout. Here's another one, although I wouldn't recommend it on a ball for starters, but balls really challenge our balance. But you can do this in a chair, and as you can see, he's nice and straight and just lifting a leg up. In your chair, you want to be 90 degrees here, and you want to be 90 degrees at this knee. So find the right chair height to do that, and then just lift the leg out and keep yourself nice and straight here. And that will challenge your core. But how do you start this exercise? What's the first thing you do? Kegel. Kegel, right? What's the second thing you do? Belly button into your spine. Good. Get this all straight, and then you lift the leg up. There's no speed prizes for these exercises. And here's your YTWL, whatever you want to call these. Again, very simple to do on the floor. And they show this person doing it on a weight bench, but you can do it on the floor. You don't need any equipment to do this. All right, so real quickly, structured physical activity does work if you do it very moderately and progress slowly, and always use symptom exacerbation as your siren. In other words, if you're exacerbating your symptoms and you're not recovering, you're doing too much. So, for example, to improve your strength and flexibility, if you start out with one set of 4 reps, do you understand that terminology? Okay, so doing it 4 times, breathing, step ups, that's like stepping, she's doing a step up right there, stepping up and down off of a little step. Wall push-ups, that's doing a push-up against a wall. Modified chair dips, which I wouldn't do them in these chairs. They have wheels, and that would be dangerous. But just pushing up and down a little bit in the chair. Toe raises. All right? 4 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you take a break. And if you could do those, and you're fine, and you can do those for a week or 2 without having any additional symptoms, then you start to progressively increase from 1 set of 4 reps to 2 sets of 8 reps, and expect that to take perhaps 3 months. 3 months. And you'll find, along with the core stability that we just talked about, that your balance will improve. You won't feel as tired doing the same tasks you did 3 months earlier. Another 3 months for the next stage of this. All right, if you want to start to add stair intervals, stepping up and down stairs, and gradually increasing that. So you might start with 1 floor, 1 set of stairs, a half a set of stairs, depending on where your starting point is, and then you take a break. You sit down and rest. And over the course of 3 months, what we found from one individual was that they were better able to negotiate stairs, go up and down stairs without exacerbating their symptoms. Now, depending on what stairs might do to your symptoms, will give you an idea of how many stairs you can do without exacerbating your symptoms, and that's where you should start. Start with what you can do that doesn't harm you, and then you progressively work up from there. And then also really important for you is to wear a heart rate monitor. Now, any individual in here that's gone through an exercise, a cardiopulmonary exercise test, may know what their anaerobic threshold is. And that's a whole other discussion. I'm going to talk more about that tonight. But they'll know what heart rate their anaerobic threshold occurs at. And when they know that information, what they can do is wear a heart rate monitor. And when they get to that heart rate, actually they don't get to that heart rate, they live their life so they stay below that heart rate, because that's the heart rate where, remember the energy currency at the beginning of this talk? Remember that? That's the heart rate for you where your energy production starts to shift into a more demanding way of producing energy that doesn't work well for you. So you have to keep your heart rate below that. And if it means you walk a flight of stairs and then you sit down and rest, and then you walk another flight of, then you walk the rest of the stairs, that's what you do. If your anaerobic threshold heart rate guideline is 90 beats per minute, and when you stand up to brush your teeth, you're at 95 beats per minute, then you need to sit down and brush your teeth. All right? These are pretty inexpensive. If you Google heart watch, you can buy them for $40. If you were to buy one, I would always recommend that you get one that has a high-low beeper on it, which means that when your heart rate gets to a certain level, the beeper will go off and it will tell you, okay, sit down, time to sit down. So if you've not done a cardiopulmonary exercise test, then your guide will have to be your symptoms. All right? What heart rate can you maintain? And it's going to be really variable. I can't throw a heart rate out there for you. But what heart rate can you maintain that doesn't make your symptoms get worse? So one way to start to figure that out without doing an exercise test is to keep a journal. Put the heart rate monitor on. Keep a journal. When When you're out doing activities, take a look at the heart rate monitor, pay attention, write it down throughout the day, and then at the end of the day and the next day, write down how you're feeling. Did your symptoms get worse? Did you not exacerbate anything? All right, because maybe you're working in that heart rate range where it's okay to be. Your energy production is fine in that heart rate range. But if you were doing some kind of activity that caused your heart rate range to be, or your heart rate to be a little higher, and the next day you had symptom flare, or that night, then you need to stay away from that heart rate. You need to be below that heart rate. Does that make sense? All right, so hopefully over time, what you'll find, if you do this gradually and progressively, that you will overall improve your quality of life, give you a greater sense of control, and hopefully you won't see that roller coaster of flaring and crashing. You know what I'm talking about, right? The roller coaster. All right. Always think energy conservation. So the last, real quickly, have I got 2 or 3 more minutes? Okay. Real quickly, 10 tips for energy conservation. All right, these are not them, but they will be shortly. First of all, again, we talked about pacing and taking those rest breaks to make your day circular. Think about how you're managing your body. I know some of you chose not to stand when I said if you want to stand, which is fine. Think about assistive devices that might help you during the course of your daily activities. That could be a cane. That could be any kind of joint assistive device that, if you're hypermobile, would be helpful in terms of energy conservation as well. And think about how you structure your day. Balance your light tasks with your heavy tasks. Don't put all your heavy tasks in one day and then say, okay, I got a week to recover. Don't do that to yourself, because remember, we need to avoid flares, not manage flares. All right, and then energy tip number 1. Okay, heads are shaking here. You're not doing that well, are you? Say no. Say no to anything that's going to zap your energy. And say yes when somebody offers to help you. Or for something that doesn't zap your energy. Number 2, prioritize. Figure out what's most important for you to get done. Make sure that your day is circular, so you have that rest and restorative period of time. Sit or lie down whenever possible, especially if you're hypotensive. The POTS folks, sit down whenever possible. Number 3, choose simple things to wear. All right? Makeup simple for the women. Hair simple for the women. You can see that I don't spend a lot of time or energy on my hair. Wrinkle-free clothing. Okay? Pretend you're going to Florida all the time. That's what you should wear. Stuff that's easy to pack, easy to take care of. All right, if you can't read that, it says, I warned you not to go there. And poor sheep got a little bit of a overdone hairdo here. In the shower, have you got a chair? If not, get one, because you can sit down and take a shower. Instead of standing in the shower and toweling off, get a terry cloth robe and just put it on. That'll soak everything up. Use the answering machine. Use it. Don't turn it off. Leave it on all the time and only answer when you feel you need to. How many of you have a basket or a backpack or something that you have with you most of the time, even in your house, where you can put your cell phone or your tissues or everything, carry around so you're not charging around through your house looking for your glasses that you can't find, which is why I wear these. They're always with me. But anybody do this? So they always have their stuff with them and they're not hunting for it, or I got to go back upstairs to find it. So think about doing that. Make your bed while you're in it, which is pretty simple to do. Or I said not make it at all, which is also pretty simple to do. Whenever possible, there are days when you don't want to cook. For me, that's most of the time. And I don't have ME, CFS. I just got too much other stuff to do. But in any event, choose recipes that you can use over and over again. So in this example, you've got chicken here that you can probably then make into chicken salad or put into a green salad. And, tuna fish in a green salad, that works very nicely. Disabled parking. Anyone in here have a disabled parking sticker? That's it. How many of you are patients in here? Okay, there are a few more patients than have disabled parking stickers. So I would encourage you to get one and use it. Now in the States, we go to our Department of Motor Vehicles and we get it that way. And I'm not sure how you would do it here, but take advantage of it. You are not improving your physical functioning by parking out in the back end of a parking lot and hoofing it into the supermarket. All right, and then lastly, something as simple as how you pack your groceries. The perishable things, the things that need to go into the refrigerator or the freezer, pack them in one container, and the rest of the stuff you can just put on the counter and leave it there and come back and take care of it some other time. Deal with the stuff that's perishable and has to be dealt with quickly. So, and when you do go to the store, unlike me, bring a list, and then you don't have to wander around wondering what you need. And if you can find somebody to deliver, all the better. So, to summarize this, the whole goal is for you to avoid flares, symptom flares. So think circularly, not linearly. So you do something, and then you take your break, and you restore, and then you move on to the next thing, and then you take your break and you restore, and then you move on to the next thing, and that's your day. It goes circularly throughout the rest of the day. Not start here, zoom around the racetrack, and hope you get to the finish line, and then feel terrible. Understand your activity limitations, and I wish I could help you more with that now, but I don't have enough information about you. But you can. You can do it yourself if you keep a journal and you pay attention to what's exacerbating your symptoms, and then you avoid that, and you think circularly. Increase your core stability. You might think, again, that it's snake oil or hocus pocus, but those little exercises that we went through to learn how to stabilize your core are incredibly important, and that's what you should be thinking whenever you do anything physical. As I said, when you get up from these chairs after this talk is over with, I want you to kegel first, suck your belly button into your spine, and then stand up. And you truly will notice a difference in the energy it takes you to stand up and get down. Structure your physical activity to gradually improve physical function. 3 months before you bump it up to the next level. And use energy conserving strategies always. So if you don't carry a little basket or a bag or something around your house with you, consider doing it. And these are called click readers. They're glasses that are always with you. They never go away. And I've lost about 20 pairs of glasses until I got these, so I don't have to go hunting for them. And thank you very much. Merci.